Beseder. Okay, guys, welcome to our third session today, which is titled "Divine Authorship and Human Authority from Bible to Rabbis." This is a session that I really like. I mean, not like all of them, but this one I like because I think it puts fantastic context on the evolution of Judaism. And as a prelude, let me say this. If anyone starts a sentence with the term or with the words Judaism says, you should already be skeptical. Judaism doesn't talk. Jews do. Okay? Judaism says nothing. Jews do. And when Jews talk throughout Jewish evolution, they say different things at different times. They need to be understood in their own context. They address sometimes different audiences. That is not to say the Jews do not try to respond to unifying ideas, but to come and claim or to have this preconceived assumption that there is such an entity as Judaism and that there is an all-inclusive consensus about what Judaism says or aims to say is misleading, to say the least. Example of which is going to be today's session, as we are going to talk about the transfer of authority from two major, arguably the major models in the evolution of that abstract entity known as Judaism. And those two models are the biblical model versus the rabbinic model. Okay? Everybody has the source sheets? All right. So let us delve into the pool. When we look at the biblical model, and when I say biblical model, for the purposes of this particular discussion, I want to make a clear distinction here, which is not viable in all lectures. So I want to make sure I'm not giving you an absolute truth, but a contextualized truth for the subject matter at hand. I'm referring to anything that is before the destruction of the Second Temple and after the destruction of the Second Temple. So the dichotomy is somewhere around 70 CE, the first century CE. Okay? Everything before we're going to call, in general, the biblical model, and you'll see why. And everything after we'll call the rabbinic model, and you'll see why. We'll start obviously with the biblical model. And here I want to claim or suggest that when we look at the Bible, or better yet, if we want to be accurate, if we look at the books that were chosen to constitute the Bible by the rabbis, and we'll talk about it later, the Bible itself is not a biblical production. An interesting thing to know, at least to be aware of. We look at the 24 books, we find something very interesting. That we have a relationship, if you remember we discussed this on the first session, we have a relationship between the God of Israel and the different constellations of the people of Israel. After you heard the first session, so even when we talk about the God of Israel, we talk about the different constellations of that God and how it is to be understood. And the people of Israel. And one can say that in many forms, and I don't want to oversimplify, but in so many words, the Bible is occupied, or those who codified and assembled the biblical writings, those were chosen to constitute the 24 books, what we call today the Hebrew Bible. Among other things, its main concern is ethical. You remember I told you about theology. We talked about the backbone of the theological discourse. is God created the world for a specific reason, and the backbone of that reason, or the teleology behind creation, is ethical. The human is perceived as a part of God above. It is perceived as a potentiality of the divine, whose purpose on earth is to put forward or to realize the divine potentiality that exists within the human, to make the world a better place. In pre-modern language or rabbinic language, it's known as Tikkun Olam. And Tikkun Olam, do not be confused, Tikkun Olam first and foremost starts with Tikkun Adam. In other words, you have to fulfill your own self in order to become a meaningful member of a community. The Bible is concerned with this ethical trajectory through the medium of a perpetual negotiation with the divine, between the people of Israel and divinity. And how do they converse with divinity? Do we find a single place in the entire Bible where the people of Israel as a whole converse with God? Don't be shy. No, even in Sinai, which you are, I understand why you said that. Sinai distinguishes itself from other forms of revelation by virtue of being a public, a communal revelation. You're absolutely correct. But if we read the story, we see the people of Israel quite telling Moses, go and you speak to him because we are to the... They don't hear what God says. Moses hears, right? Moses hears. And by the way, if you follow the story, you see again that the actual story, the actual biblical narrative is quite different from the Charleston Heston Ten Commandments version, where we have in our minds Moses going to Sinai, talking to God. I'm not even talking about the Mel Brooks version of it. God has given you 10 commandments, right? No.
For you.
Right. Moses doesn't go to Sinai once. Moses ascends to Sinai thrice. Yes, 3 times. He first talks to God. God says to him, go down, see if the people of Israel would like me to be their God. Yeah, it's a very, very interesting point. God doesn't force itself on the people of Israel. The idea of the covenantal pledge between the people of Israel and the God of Israel is based on the people's consent, acceptance of divine authority. That's a major, major element in Jewish thought as well, and its theological backbone. Goes down, asks the people of Israel, are you willing to do it? They say yes. He goes back up, reports to God. God says, great, go, prepare the people, 3 days, you won't come near a woman, blah, 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 blah. Moses then goes back up 3rd time, and then the whole spiel begins. So 3 times he goes. Okay? Now, if we don't find any place in the entire biblical narrative where God speaks to the community of Israel, then how does this covenantal relationship realize itself in the biblical stories?
The mediator.
Through
Mediator.
mediators. Who are the mediators that we find in the biblical stories? You're right, mediators. Now, don't be shy, there are plenty of them. So, first of all, you said Nevi'im, prophets. More.
Abraham, Isaac, and
The patriarchs. Moses, we'll call him a prophet, right? Yeah? What else? Give me figures, not names, but positions.
Okay, the priests.
Priests, Kohanim, Nevi'im, what else? Angels, okay, yes, some sort of beings that are neither human nor divine, but they're angelic. And we talked about the evolution of those in the first session. What else?
What category is King David?
Kings. Monarchs, absolutely. It's a category. Kings, what else?
What's that? The Torah? The actual...
Okay, the Torah will deal with that. Significant negotiator. Science, you said? Signs. Okay. Ototu Muftim, right? We have signs that usually, and we'll see that, Ototu Muftim usually come to substantiate the validity of a mediator. They're not mediators in that. Dreams, so all of these. What else? Besides humans, what else? Think outside the box, or should I say outside the tabernacle?
Bilam's donkey.
Donkeys, yes.
Okay, so we have animals, but those, okay? Others, we have institutions. The temple. right? In the temple you see inner circles of sanctity. The closer you got to the Holy of Holies, right? The more sanctified you become until you get to the point, right? The actual point that is uber amplified at a certain juncture in both space and time. Yom Kippur, where the high priest goes there, and if you know the Talmudic, the Midrashic story about the high priest in Yom Kippur who goes into the thing and he has a golden string that is 10 meters, 30 feet long, that is attached to him. So if he has any kind of blemish, he would be struck dead. Nobody is allowed to go in, so they can pull him out. That's